Hey, it's Rachel. I decided to run an experiment this year and document it on my website. I thought I'd share with you guys what I'm doing. Currently hanging out on my deck with my dogs because I wanted to have the garden in the background while I talk about this. The experiment is to more rigorously document how close I can get to achieving nutritional sufficiency out of my own backyard garden. I get this question a lot in different forms. How self-sufficient can you be? How much of your food do you grow? Personally, I'm not trying to grow everything that I eat. I'm not giving up coffee or chocolate, and I live in Michigan, so I can't grow either of those here. But I did want to see how close I could get to theoretically achieving all of the nutrition that I would need. First, what do I mean by nutritional sufficiency? I see people doing videos on survival gardens and that kind of thing. This is much more around how do you establish a balanced diet for optimal health and nutrition, and source as much of it as possible from your own backyard. There's two aspects to this. There's the vitamins and minerals that we need to consume for our bodies to function, as well as energy in the form of calories required by our bodies. I'm going to insert a diagram here from a published paper, I'll cite the source below, that was focused on how to build a healthy human diet. The paper represented this as a triangle where you have vitamin and mineral-rich foods at the top, and then foods with more energy density at the bottom. They suggest starting with the vitamins and mineral sides of things, and in particular, there's emphasis on leafy greens, cruciferous vegetables, as well as stems, bulbs, and mushrooms. These are things that are relatively easy to grow in your own backyard. Where it gets trickier are when it comes to the calorie side of this equation. There's two ways to get your energy. The first is through plant sources. That can be the primarily carbohydrate-focused ones, shown in this green circle. Those would be fruits, cereal crops like wheat or oats, pulses and legumes, as well as your starchy vegetables like your potatoes. All of those are a great source of energy from plants. The other important thing to add on the plant-based side would be things like nuts and seeds. Those really give you your fat-based energy. For those of us that do not follow vegetarian diets, you've got the option on the bottom left here, shown in yellow, of animal products. This is your meat, your dairy, your poultry, your fish, your eggs. Honey, I think, would go in here as well. But the point is, you can get your energy from either the bottom left or the bottom right, or a combination of the two. Now, when you think about what most of us can grow in our own backyards, I personally am not going to be raising any meat. I'm not going to have a dairy cow or a goat back here. When I went through the list in that yellow circle, the only thing that really worked for me was eggs. I suspect that's going to be the same for many people. When you look at the plant side of it, you really can grow pretty much all of that. The only thing I would flag as being challenging would be cereal crops like wheat or oats or barley. They just take a lot of space. Something like rice would require flooding your backyard on a periodic basis. For that reason, I'm primarily ignoring cereals as part of this experiment. We talk about what I'm actually growing in the experiment. If you saw my May garden tour video, you'll have a sense of what I'm growing already, but just to quickly recap, I do focus heavily on cruciferous greens because they check two of those boxes in the big green circle up top. That would be things like arugula, mustard greens, and kale. I have a lot of other salad greens that I grow as well, namely chard, spinach, and lettuce. I then have a whole slew of additional cruciferous crops that I grow, such as broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, cauliflower, and radishes. When it comes to the bulbs side of that, I have onion and garlic growing in the garden, as well as my wine cap mushrooms. Moving on to my energy sources, I do have quite a few perennial fruit crops planted out behind me. I have 2 apple trees, 2 pear trees, a nectarine tree, several grapevines along that western wall, and a whole slew of different berry bushes. I have blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, and honeyberries planted with strawberries. I have a couple of annual fruit crops as well, namely muskmelon and watermelon growing out there. When it comes to the legumes and the pulses side of things, I have a whole plethora of drying beans growing in the garden, as well as some snap peas. Rounding it out with the starchy vegetables, I have things like beets, carrots, potatoes, and sweet potatoes all growing in the garden. For nuts and seeds, my perennial crop here would be my hazelnut bushes. Those will not be producing for many years, but this year I am filling in as well with some Lady Godiva pumpkins. They are known for the hull-less seeds that are ready to eat straight out of the plant. I'm hoping to get quite a crop of those seeds to help supplement some of the energy I'm going to need coming out of the garden. And then for my animal products, I will be getting eggs. They're going to be an important source of fat in particular, as well as protein, and in general should help bulk up the calories coming out of this system behind me. I'll quickly note, I have a lot of other things I grow, like tomatoes, peppers, summer and winter squashes, and cucumbers and asparagus are things my family enjoys eating, and hence I'm growing them, even though they don't exactly fit this ideal dietary triangle. Every time I harvest anything this year, I am weighing it and documenting the grams harvested of every single crop. I've been converting the grams into servings as I go along, and I'm tracking that over time. I'll show a chart of my progress so far. I'm filming this in mid-June. I had one big crop of overwintered carrots that I had planted last fall, and I harvested out this spring. The other big spike you'll see on here was me cleaning out a bed that had been filled with overwintered salad greens. Once they eventually started to bolt, I did clear that whole bed out, which is why you see that big spike. Otherwise, you'll see some moderate spikes of mushrooms every time we've had a rain event, and then a steady trickle over time of my salad greens, as well as more recently an uptick in berries because they are starting to come in. In total, I have had at this point about 70 servings out of the garden, roughly 40 servings of different salad greens, about 20 servings of root crops, mostly those carrots, but some radish as well, 10 servings of mushrooms, and a smattering of other things like the start of my berries, some asparagus, and some snap peas that are starting to come in. In addition to calculating the servings, I pulled the USDA data for the nutritional elements of all of these different crops, and I'm summarizing that as well as I go along to calculate the total nutrition I'm drawing out of the garden, both in vitamins and minerals, as well as the macros of protein, fat, and carbohydrates for each crop, and total caloric yield out of the system. Every month, I'm going to post an update on how this is going along, and by the end of the growing season, I'm hoping to document how close I got to nutritional sufficiency. I can already tell you I'm not going to hit it this year. My perennial tree crops in particular, like the apples, the pears, the hazelnuts, the nectarines, are not going to be producing anytime soon. For that reason, 2025 will not exactly be a representative year, but my plan is to continue documenting this every gardening year and see how close I can get over time to the ultimate goal of nutritional sufficiency. As part of that, I'm going to include some extremely nerdy and detailed charts on the website every month. I'll show one here. Because all of the different vitamins and minerals have different recommended daily amounts, to keep it all apples to apples, no pun intended, I have converted everything into equivalent daily servings. I'm basing it on an 1,800 calorie diet, targeting 60 grams of protein and 55 grams of fat every day. I'm then comparing what I've harvested in total against that to see how many days worth of everything I have been able to take out of the garden. And if you look at this chart, you'll see because of that huge carrot harvest, I had an insane amount of vitamin A that I've taken out of the system, 155 days total. I'm going to truncate that line down on the chart or nothing else would even be visible. I've also had a really high yield of vitamin C. Around 13 days worth of vitamin C has already come out of the system. Everything else is a lot more balanced. I'm tracking to about, call it 1 to 4 days worth of most of the major trace elements that we need, like potassium, magnesium, or phosphorus. I'm really quite high on fiber, given the amount of salad greens and carrots I've taken out of the system so far. That's not too surprising. And about a day's worth of calories, protein, and carbohydrates. The two areas that I'll note are low. First are sodium, and second is fat. The sodium doesn't exactly worry me. In general, most of us have too much sodium in our diets. And when I prepare and cook these vegetables, I do salt my dishes. I'm less worried about the sodium, but I do want to see whether I can improve the fat yield out of this. Once the chickens start laying in earnest, that should balance itself out. But until I start getting those hazelnuts out of this system, I suspect I will be low on fat for at least a year or two. That's the experiment for 2025. The June update is already on the website. I will post another one in mid-July, show you guys the cumulative yield out of this system and how it is going. If anybody else is curious and wants to follow along, you can find it there. Otherwise, I will post a video every month on this channel, giving everybody a quick summarized view of it, along with my other normal gardening content. But for those of you that want to nerd out on this with me, thought I'd get it up onto the website so you can deep dive into all the charts and the math and the data. If there's questions or specific details that I didn't cover in this, please let me know in the comments, and I will try and address it as quickly as possible. My next video will be a tour of the chicken coop and run. And until then, I hope everybody is having a great gardening year, and I hope that this experiment is as interesting to you guys as it is to me. Until next time, thanks.